Welcome to Inspiring Narratives, your favorite channel for uplifting stories, renewed hope, and cultivating a deeper connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Discover with me how turning to Allah can lead you to amazing changes in your life. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are back with another uplifting story that will, by the grace of Allah, strengthen your faith and renew your hope, inshallah. Let's start by sending peace and blessings on our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Pour yourself a cup of something you love, get comfortable, and let's get started with our story. Today's story is about a woman who went through a series of struggles and life changes, which ultimately led to positive outcomes due to her strong faith and perseverance. Some may blame her while others may stand by her. This woman divorced from her husband many years ago. They had children, 2 daughters and 3 sons. The husband abandoned her and left her. She returned to her family home and her children stayed with her for about a year and a half. During that time, her husband refused to take responsibility for their children, even though he had the financial means to support them. Despite being wealthy and able to spend large sums of money, he deliberately withheld support, as she explains, hoping I would eventually give them up. At that time, going to court was an embarrassment and no one wanted to go down that route. And it also cost money to hire a lawyer, of which I didn't have. My father was taking care of my children financially. However, his salary was just about enough for himself and the expenses and the responsibilities he had. After helping out for a year and a half, my father told me that he wouldn't be able to spend money on my children anymore and that their father would have to sort something out. I didn't know what to do at that point. Work for me was out of the question, as I didn't have a degree or work experience and my circumstances were difficult. It seemed like all I could do at that point was to take my children and drop them off to their father. I was so confused. I didn't know what to do. I spent months thinking about how I could resolve this problem. How would I live without them in my life? How could I leave them? My heart was aching. I felt like I didn't really have an option. People were advising me to give the children to their father since he refused to take me back. My ex-husband had remarried, so after he divorced, he got married again. He was wealthy with a high income and status he was proud of, but his wealth blinded him. With so many connections, I didn't stand a chance against him. I tried everything I could to claim my rights, but nothing worked. I put my faith in Allah and said Allah will take care of me. And I handed the children over to their father. I remember the moment I did this. The pain and heartache I felt seeing my children go was unbearable. My daughters were crying. My youngest son was still small and needed his mother, and my boys. The situation was so difficult. No one can understand the agony I felt during those moments. Even now, I still ache and cry whenever I think about that moment. I stayed with my family for a year, and during that time, I only saw my children occasionally. It broke my heart not having them with me. But at the same time, I found some comfort knowing that they were well taken care of. They had everything they needed at their father's place, living in luxury I couldn't provide. Their health even improved, and it was clear they were doing really well there. I would often repeat to myself, Allah is sufficient for me, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. These words gave me comfort. I accepted that my children would grow up, live their lives, and that my ex-husband had remarried. His new wife hadn't had children, so she considered my children as her own. She was content and happy with her life. However, the problems I had with him were because of her. My father would say, "Until when will you remain in this situation? How are you going to live? The years are going by. Focus on yourself." Everyone around me advised me to move on because eventually my children will grow up, have their own families and move on with their own lives. But I was still holding on to the hope that I would one day get them back. I was surprised by my father's words. I thought there must be something behind those words. Why is he talking to me like that? Then, surprisingly, after 3 days, someone came forward to propose to me. At that time, I was only 28 years old. I considered the idea of remarrying but deep down, and I still had a small hope of being reunited with my children. So I refused the proposal. After some time, another man came forward. This proposal no one would accept, as he was married, had children, and lived with his wife in his family home because his mother was sick and needed care. His wife didn't have any issues, was beautiful, she had all the characteristics any man would wish for in a woman. Why would he want to marry me? I later found out that his wife was a negative person and he wanted someone kind who would put up with his life. He wanted to marry me to take care of his mother, basically. I immediately told my father that I didn't want to get married and that he shouldn't bring it up again. My father got angry and told me that I couldn't stay like this forever. I won't be here for you forever, my father would say. He said that my brothers were growing up and would eventually live their own lives, and that I couldn't depend on him or my mother in the long run. Get married and have children, he'd tell me. Don't tell me what about my children. They will grow up and have their own lives, and they'll get married and have families of their own. Reconsider your options, because this way of life I won't agree with. I spent a lot of time thinking about what my father said, and he was right. I told him that if someone suitable came along, I'd be open to considering it, but only if he was genuinely a good match for me. After all, it's a lifelong decision. My father agreed. Time went by, and about a year later, a man came over to ask for my hand. He was divorced with 3 sons. His ex-wife had remarried, had another child, and seemed happy in her own life, so there didn't seem to be much chance of them getting back together. After careful consideration, I agreed to marry him because I wanted to live my life and have something for myself instead of being stuck at my family's home. I took 2 weeks to think about it and I finally agreed. I married him and alhamdulillah, he turned out to be a good man. Even his children treated me with respect and I took them as my own. After my marriage, I moved to another city and my ex-husband cut off all communications with my children because of my marriage. He had no mercy on me or wanted me to live my life. He didn't want to take me back and he didn't want me to get married. My father would comfort me and say, "Don't worry, the children will come back to you no matter what. You are their mother." My husband's children were growing up, mashallah, and they were now teenagers. They would visit their mother regularly, and their father never stopped them from staying over at her place. Everyone was living a good life and they all got along well. The children understand that their father and mother didn't get along and each parent had a new life now. I couldn't help but wonder why my situation was so different from theirs. Every time I returned to my country, I tried to see my children, but they were cold towards me. It was as if they had forgotten I was their mother. As they grew older, their resentment towards me only got stronger. With every visit, they were different towards me. It was as if I wasn't even their mother. These were not the children I raised. As they got older, their hatred towards me seemed to increase. I didn't know what to do. So I went back with my husband and I was away for 2 years. Every day I would try to contact them, but nobody would answer me. My children were teenagers by now and I didn't know how to deal with them. My husband had stopped travelling and we settled down in our home country. Even though I'm now married and my husband has an ex-wife, and her children come and go, their relationship is one of respect. They still remain on good terms and they communicate well with one another. He'll call her and say, "I'll send the children over." They would communicate and talk about their children, like don't allow them to stay up too late. They both wanted what was best for their children. I often wondered, what did I do wrong that my life isn't like this? Meanwhile, my stepchildren had a great relationship with their mother. They would visit her and stay at her house, and everything was normal and nice between them. After we settled down, my husband told me that when we build our new house, he'll create a special room just for me and my children, hoping they might visit one day. He always treated them as if they were his own. I would continuously try to communicate with my children. They came to visit me once. If I didn't ask about them, they wouldn't bother to call me or speak to me. They had no desire to see me or communicate with me. I don't know what he has told them about me. After 3 months, I requested that they come over and visit me. They had changed their numbers, but my husband was able to get their phone numbers for me, alhamdulillah. One day I asked them to come visit me. The way they talked to me was so different, like they weren't my children anymore. They refused to come over. I requested that they come so that we can talk and discuss things. They refused to come. After a lot of pleading, they agreed to meet at a public place on the condition that my husband wouldn't be there. They didn't want to see him. I agreed and respected their wish, and my husband was understanding of the situation. My brother and I met my children at a public place. They told me straight up that they didn't want me in their lives anymore, that I had abandoned them, and that their father had been the one taking care of them. My brother tried to comfort me and said, "Don't stress yourself out." My brother had to raise his voice at my children, as the way they were talking to me was very inappropriate and disrespectful. I am their mother regardless of whatever has happened, and even if I was at fault. But honestly, I don't believe I am. I waited 1.5 years for him to reconsider taking me back, but he wasn't interested. I wanted my children to stay with me, but he refused to step up and fulfill his responsibilities as a father by supporting them financially. He shut down every option I had until I was left with no choice but to leave my children. I got married and started a new life. There's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, they told me, "Don't call us. Don't ask about us, as we don't want you in our life anymore. Why are you trying to communicate with us now? We were happy and we had forgotten about you. Why are you coming into our lives again? We have a mother who raised us and looks after us." Of course, no mother can stand to hear such words from her own children. My head felt like it was about to explode. I was heartbroken. We left. I cried the whole way home. My husband was so supportive. He kept telling me to keep praying and to ask Allah to guide their hearts. The guidance comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not from us. I started repeating the phrase, "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah." There is no change or strength except with Allah. After every prayer, I would repeat these words, hoping that their hearts would soften towards me. I would also repeat the Hawqala before sleeping. A month passed while I stuck to this routine of repeating the Hawqala daily after each prayer and before going to bed. Actually, less than a month. It was about 24 days. And one day, I was shocked. I was surprised to see my eldest son at my front door. I couldn't believe it. He was standing in front of me. My son, who only just a few weeks ago didn't want to see me ever again. And now he was standing right in front of me. He kissed my head and asked me to forgive him, saying that he had been in the wrong and didn't know how he treated me the way he did. He stayed with me for 2 days. I was so happy. A day later, after he had left, he came back with his siblings. All my children came to visit me. They stayed with me for a week. I was surprised their father didn't call them during that week. I asked them what happened and why they changed their thoughts about me. They told me that their father had admitted that he who had abandoned me and not the other way round. The reason he did that and said all those nasty things was because he was angry that I remarried. Since then, my relationship with my children has flourished. They visit me, stay at my house, and we have a great bond now. Even their father communicates with me regarding their needs. Everything I wished for came true, and now I'm happy to say that my eldest son is getting married soon. My life has completely turned around. I'm grateful for everything and have learned the power of patience and trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the dhikr of la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no change or strength except with Allah. I hope this story inspires others who are going through difficult times or possibly a similar situation. Be patient and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wholeheartedly. It's all a matter of time. I ask Allah to ease your pains and to bless you with what your heart desires. This brings us to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you found any value in this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your family and friends. And if you'd like to hear more of these stories, then consider subscribing. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so do leave a comment below. I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.